It all started when I was a photography student at the Art Academy in Jerusalem, and it was 2009. And at that time, there was this group project that was being done. It was organized by a French Jewish photographer named Frédéric Brenner. He had this idea to bring a group of very well-known names in the world of photography to Israel to explore it for an extended amount of time, and to basically make individual projects that will afterwards become a group exhibition, some books, and so on. This incredible group of photographers, among them were Jeff Wall, Stephen Shore, and Joseph Kudelka. You know, I met Joseph Kudelka, this is how I kind of describe it. I first met him as a student in the library of my school, just pulling out, you know, the Book of Gypsies, going through it and being completely blown away. So 3 years after, suddenly meeting him in this hotel in Jerusalem was this kind of incredible opportunity and surprise. Back then, a student, as I said, I was picked out of my department. The department was having this cooperation with this project, and we were just kind of thrown together in the same boat. As I said, I never intended it to really become a film. So what happened is, as a student of photography, I got this incredible chance to hang out with Joseph Kudelka while he was working. Yet, on the second day of working with him, as we were driving up to the West Bank, to a small city called el-Fachem, he went out of the car. It was one of the first locations we arrived to that he found interest in. I kind of followed him, but I was, as a student of photography, bringing my camera with me. So I took out the camera and started photographing. But he quite fast turned to me and he said, "Listen, there's no way you're hanging around with this camera while I'm working, so leave it in the car." And I obeyed, yet I felt rather uncomfortable, not to say upset, with this kind of request. And the next location that we stopped at, I just took out my camera again and began photographing once more. And this time he kind of turned to me. I was rather concerned about what he's going to say, but then he just didn't say anything and he walked away. So that was the point where something started to happen. Back then, 2009, it was short after Canon were bringing out this camera called 5D Mark II, which had this video mode. And I just started playing. So at the beginning I was taking photographs, but it was really then that I started playing with that, finding out, oh wow, this is kind of cool, and the quality is great, and I started making these short videos, not of him at the beginning actually, just of the surrounding that we were photographing in. But very soon I realized that he is really the most interesting thing around, and started turning my gaze and my camera towards him. This is when a film began without even knowing it's a film.
The brigade, together with other reserve units, turned the war around and was able to push the Syrian army completely out of the Golan. After one day of reorganization, the brigade participated in the counterattack into Syrian territory. This offense took place in the northern Golan, on the main road leading to Damascus. In this difficult battle,
Yeah, it looks good. One never knows what's going to happen when you develop it, yeah, but it looks good.
What happened was this. Basically, Kudelka came to Israel and Palestine throughout 4 years, for 7 times. Each time was about a month, in which we would work from dawn to sunset. And weekends, holidays, everything. It was, just imagine like a whole month constantly working, going to photograph. In between these visits, there was about half a year each time. So I had this wonderful opportunity as a maker, as a creator, to each time have a look at what I've done. So it started with me making a bunch of photographs and then experimenting with this video mode, really kind of running around him with the camera, handheld, no mic, complete disaster. Mainly, if I now look at this material, it was mainly also, filming him from the back, as I was still his assistant, and the priority was having him working in the optimal conditions. So I never went in front, I never went even on the side. The angle is always, that first time, is from the back. After I was watching these materials, I said, okay, this is terrible. And next time I started changing something. Each time there was this real process of evolution, till at one point, it happened gradually, that I realized that if I want to try to catch something of this person, of his working process, which as a student of photography really interested me, I would have to kind of follow him, learn from him, imitate him sometimes. And that's when my filmography started changing. That's when I started slowing down. I started putting my camera on a tripod and thinking as a photographer in moving image. So paying much more attention to my compositions. As he was, with time, also showing me more and more photographs and kind of having me as part of the process of learning the terrain and so on, I could also learn from his way of composing and apply it in some ways to my own compositions I was making, in which he was actually the moving element. And this is how slowly this kind of visual language that you see nowadays in the film that was created was developed. Our relationship as an apprentice and a master also went through a very gradual evolution. It began with what I described as this kind of very distant and rather harsh approach of him towards me. I even think, if I think about it today, he was rather suspicious of me. I think coming to Israel, knowing what he knew about Israel, and also coming with this kind of cargo of growing up in Czechoslovakia, in the East Bloc, behind the Iron Curtain, he was taught to be suspicious of everybody and of everything. And as I was basically kind of offered to him as an assistant by the project, he was rather suspicious of me as well at the beginning. We went through many different stages of kind of getting closer, but at one point I think he realized that I'm first of all not against him. I'm not there to keep an eye on him, and that I am even in a way, beneficial in some way to him and to his project. And I think he learned to also appreciate the effort and the work I'm putting into making his project possible. And that's where a certain feeling of trust, which is essential in making a film like this, started developing and became stronger and stronger as we went along. Yet he was never really interested in what I'm doing. I think Josef is one of these unique characters and artists that are so dedicated. Photography is him, and him is photography. He wakes up in the morning to his photographs. He goes throughout the day either photographing or editing or thinking about it. He goes to sleep with them, dreams about them, and wakes up in the morning to his photographs again. This is his life. And nothing, everything else is a disturbance. So everything else he puts aside, including me and what I was, doing around him. I think at the beginning he was just thinking to himself, okay, I'll let this guy do whatever he wants to do, just so he doesn't kind of bother me, while I'm working. You asking me what I discovered about myself as an artist. I think probably one of the most important things is that I reacted. That something happened there, and I didn't just leave it be. I reacted to it. I did. It came out of an urge. The urge was, when I realized that Joseph Kudelka does not need an assistant, and maybe he needs a driver, I wasn't really so much interested in being Joseph Kudelka's driver. I picked up my camera. That was the most, the first thing that came in mind. It was rather natural. And I think this is something I discovered about myself that I do when something happens. I think it's kind of a principle in any artistic practice. You must do, and this is something that I'm happy. I reacted to what happened to me in front of me as I did. I think also I learned that I'm rather persistent. So even if I'm told off, I try again. One of the major things I learned from him, and I told him that on a later stage when I did come and show him some short material. I went to Paris to show him and close people to him a certain edited version of like 20 minutes of the material. He asked me, what did you learn from the time with me and making this project together? The first thing I told him, and that was the most genuine thing I could come up with, that I learned how to look. But that I learned how to look not only in ways of photography or of aesthetics, composition, light, and so on. I learned how to look at something I was taught not to look at in a very kind of passive and gradual way. I was really, like many Israelis, most Israelis, we're taught to kind of keep a blind eye to what's happening in the West Bank, to this wall. If you go to Jerusalem, for instance, it's kind of, this wall is really, if you live in West Jerusalem where Israelis live, you don't see it. But it is half a kilometer away. It's only if you stand in a very specific point and you kind of look to a certain direction, this is when you kind of get a glimpse of it. And I think many people choose not to see it. And I think through this time with him and this incredible opportunity to break my own boundaries in a way and travel the West Bank with him and go along the route of this barrier, that I learned how to look at something and to understand it and to internalize it in a way, and to learn about myself and about my society through it. Joseph came to Israel first time in 2008. I was not involved back then. He actually refused to participate in this group project initially. He said, to the organizer, he did not want to get himself involved in something that he knows is extremely complicated. He tries to keep his life simple, and that he would kindly refuse his request. Frederic, the organizer, was pursuing him for a very long time, till he managed to convince him to come to this exploratory mission, of 2 weeks, in which he would take him around the whole country and show him the most varied landscape and elements in the country possible. And Joseph agreed on the condition that he would pay, like Joseph would pay his flight and stay in Israel. He did not want to feel obliged to anybody. He went to this exploratory mission. They went all around the country, and it was really towards the end of that visit that they went to East Jerusalem. And then this is the first time that Joseph saw the wall. And I think something very profound happened to him. I mean, this is my interpretation, but as I know from learning from him, it connected him to his past, to the teenager Joseph, or even the child Joseph, growing under German occupation, later Soviet occupation, and later on also growing, behind a barrier, which is a different barrier, of course. It's not as physical, but it's a very mental barrier, the Iron Curtain. There were places he could never go to. And I think that resonated in him when he saw the wall in East Jerusalem. When he saw that wall, he was not sure exactly what it is about in other places. He was not sure he would be able to make a project as he wanted. I mean, that's actually the point where he decided to make that, okay, I have something to do here, and felt a certain mission, I think, and agreed to participate in this project. Yeah, he didn't really know what it is about in other places. He thought, okay, maybe this is just a segment that looks like this, but everything else is extremely different. And it was only when we started going around that he discovered that this wall is built out of many different elements. It's an 800-kilometer infrastructure that goes from the south of the West Bank to the north of the West Bank and kind of winds throughout this incredible landscape. Most of it is actually fence, which is not very photographic in the sense of it's transparent. But in the urban areas, it's this wall. And he decided he wants to photograph every element that composes this infrastructure. So we were going around really everywhere along this 800 kilometers. And I was, together with him, discovering what it is about, which I can guarantee you that 99% of Israelis have no clue. Because they just didn't see it. They just didn't go along it as we did. There's very few people that took that time and opportunity to do that. In making the film, from the point that it was apparent that it would become a film, and that was about the 5th or 6th time that Joseph arrived to Israel, where I kind of realized, okay, there's something there in this material that is worth kind of carving out, and that might interest other people and not only myself. Then later on, together with the help of the wonderful editor and co-writer of this film, Elisa Purfust, whom I met in Germany, we started going through the material and really like chiseling out this statue that was hiding in this block of marble. And I think, there were so many directions to take this. But what interests me and what interests Elisa in this process was really the creative process. How does an artist in this caliber manages, how does he act, how does he look for something, how does he choose? And we had to, in many ways as he does, eliminate a lot of things along that path. In many ways also making perhaps this film a bit less accessible, or less popular in the sense of reaching a larger crowd, but kind of keeping a certain integrity of what really was the truth of this material. So we decided not to use music. We decided that the sound of these environments is powerful enough in order to, for you to experience them. We decided to use, of course, the photographs in the most, I would say, respectful way, and kind of to give them the space and time that they need. Part of that was also to keep them completely silent, as photographs are silent. So when you have these sequences of photographs along the film, they have not even, an accompanying hiss. It's 100% vacuum of sound, which might have many people feel very uncomfortable. Yet I think this is the way to experience them. We did interview Kudelka. We interviewed him twice in both of his studios, once in Paris, once in Prague. We were playing a lot with that material, yet we decided in the end to leave those interviews as a location out of the film, as they were, again, a disturbance. You kind of try to trickle it down to the very basic elements of what should be there. So these interviews as a visual were left out, yet we did take some of the audio interview, and they are on top of these sequences that are kind of a voiceover over the sequences of contact sheets of Kudelka from his past projects, Gypsies, Exiles, and so on. As through the few things that he's saying there, you can learn a lot about him and about his working process, about his choices, and about his life, which is, of course, an incredibly important thing to realize. To understand why he arrived to Israel, why he decided to stay there and photograph what he did, but also to kind of get a wider understanding of this person and this incredible artist.